Hello, I got this game Sniper Elite for Christmas this year, so I thought I'd do a setup and how to play. It comes with both solo rules and regular rules if you're playing against another person or people. I'm just going to go over the multiplayer rules in this setup and how to play, but I will speak a little bit at the end about the solo play as I did do that um, as well. Anyway, let's get started with how to set up for the multiplayer game. The first thing you'll do is decide which side of the board you want to play on. It's a double-sided board. One side is the launch facility and one side is the submarine pins. The rules do say if it's your first game, you should go with the launch facility. So that's this side of the board. So that's the one I'm going to use in my demo here. There is a matching board, just kind of smaller, that you'll give to the player that's going to be the sniper. So there's one for each side of the map, so you'll give that to the sniper player. You'll also give the submarine player the objective cards that go with the map you're playing. So the objective cards that have LF for launch facility will go with that map. There's a separate set that have SP for submarine pins. Since we're doing the launch facility, we'll give those to the sniper player. You'll also give the sniper player the dry erase marker that they'll use with the small map board. You'll give them the sniper miniature. You'll give them this shot bag, this cloth bag. It's known as the shot bag, along with your aim, noise, and recoil tokens. And this is a deck of cards known as the loadout cards. So all of that goes to the sniper player. And you can give them this player aid as well. The other player or players, you can play just two-player, where one player is the sniper and one player plays all the defenders, which is how I'm going to play this, but you can play it up to 4 players where one player plays the sniper and 3 players each play a squad of defenders. I'm going to be showing a 2-player game, so the second player will control all the defenders. So the first thing you'll give them is the tracking cubes. The action cubes, it'll be 4 of each red, black, and yellow. You'll give them the 3 suppression tokens, the 2 dog tokens, the double-sided wound token, the 9 defender miniatures, 3 of each squad, and the countdown track. The sniper will shuffle the objective cards and draw 2, keeping them secret from the other player or players. As long as they're 2 different suits, then he's good. If you happen to draw 2 of the same suit, then you would choose one and put the other one at the bottom of the objective pile and draw again until you have 2 different suits. These numbers on the objective cards correspond to numbers on the map. So one of the objectives, 8, that'll be one objective, and 5, that'll be over here in the red sector. So those are the objectives for the sniper player. Again, those are kept secret from the other players. The rest of the objective deck just goes back in the box. Sniper player will then load his shot bag with 6 aim, 2 noise, and 3 recoil tokens. Put those in the bag and mix them up. Just set aside the remaining aim and noise tokens. Any remaining recoil tokens will not be used. They could go back in the box. Those are used in the solo game. The sniper player can then look at the loadout cards. There are some that there's duplicates, and you can choose both of them if you want. So you'll choose 3 of them, and you can take 2 of the same one if you want. The rest you'll just put face down and form a stack. So for example, we'll say this the sniper player chose the silenced ammo, sound masking, and S-mine. Again, these are kept secret from the other players just like your objectives are. I just have mine face up since I'm just here by myself. The other player or players will place their defender miniatures or units on their starting spaces on the board. The officer that has the X or cross on his base will go on the matching colored cross space, and the other two soldiers will go on the regular spaces matching their color. So again, you'll do that so here's the officer with the iron cross. He'll go on that space, and then the other two soldiers with the black bases will go there. And again, the officer with the iron cross will go here for the yellow figures, and then the other two soldiers will go on their starting spaces there. If you were playing with more than two players, as I mentioned, if you're playing with 4 players, one player would control each of these squads. If you were playing 2 players or 3 players, one player would control one squad, one player would control another squad, and then those 2 players would cooperatively control the 3rd squad. But again, in this case where I'm setting up for a 2-player game, the 2nd player will control all the squads. Anyway, the players will then choose 3 of the specialist cards to use for this game, and these kind of give your officer a special power. So in this example, we'll choose the sniper, the radio operator, and the scout. And you'll put 1 suppression token on each of those specialist cards. You'll then assign each of those specialist cards to a squad by placing 2 of the action tokens matching that squad's color on the specialist card. So for instance, we'll assign the black base squad there to the sniper specialist card. We'll assign the radio operator to the yellow squad. And finally, we'll assign the scout to the red squad. So the corresponding squad's officer will have access to that special ability, which he'll be able to use on his turn up to 2 times during the game. Each time he uses that special ability, he'll have to remove one of the tokens on there. Once they're both removed, then that ability can't be used again. You place the remaining action tokens on the 10 space of the countdown board. You then put the full wound token, full side of the wound token in this space on the countdown board. And that completes setup. These tokens won't be used unless you use the specialist Kennel Master, which was not chosen for this game, so those will just be set out of the game. These tokens will be used later in the game for tracking possible places the sniper may be. So we're finished with setup, and next we'll get started with the first turn of the game with the how to play, and the sniper will go first. Alright, so how do we play? Well, the first thing, the sniper takes the first turn, and the first thing he does on his first turn of the game is choose his starting position. The starting positions are these arrows in the matching sectors on the side of the board, and the sniper cannot choose to enter in a sector where one of his objectives are. So for instance, he has objective 5 and 8. Well, objective 5 is here in the red sector, so he could not choose this as a starting position. And he has objective 8 here, so he cannot choose the black starting position. So he's got to choose either the yellow starting position or the white starting position. And of course, his opponent does not know what his objectives are, so the opponents don't know that he, which starting positions he can or can't start from. Only the sniper knows that. But the sniper knows in this case that he can only come in the yellow or the white, so he'll choose one of those and somehow mark what his starting position is going to be. Like maybe he's going to choose here, and he puts a S or an X or something that looks kind of like a 3. But anyway, something to mark that that's his starting position. So normally on the sniper's turn, he can do 3 things. He can move, he can use one of his loadout cards, and he can do one of 3 actions. Either shoot, or loot an objective spot that is not one of his objectives, or complete an objective if he is in the space where one of his objective is at. However, on the first turn of the game, and normally, the sniper can do those in any order. He can shoot, then move, or he could move, then complete an objective, or whatever, any of those actions in any order. But on the very first turn of the game, because he's on a starting location which is not really on the board, the first thing he has to do is move. So for his first turn of the game, the first thing the sniper has to do is move, but thereafter he can take one of the other actions prior to moving or not move at all. So let's talk about movement. The sniper can move 0, 1, 2, or 3 spaces. If he moves 0 or 1 space, then the defenders don't know anything. The sniper just writes the current number of the objective, or the of the countdown track on the space that he is in on his secret board. So, for example, on the first turn, if he just decided to move 1 space here, well, he's on 10. The action markers are on 10 of the objective track, so he would write a 10 in here. And then he would know that that's where he was at this point of the game. And he doesn't need to tell the defenders anything. He doesn't need to tell them if he moved or didn't, or how many spaces he moved, anything like that. However, if the sniper moves 2 or 3 spaces, then he may have to alert the defenders. And the only reason that may happen is if he moved adjacent in the moving 2 or 3 spaces. If he started his move adjacent, or ended his move adjacent, or moved through a space that is adjacent to one of the defenders, then he would have to tell them, one of those defenders, that they heard a noise. For example, if it was the first turn of the game and the sniper moved 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, this space is adjacent to both this defender and this defender. So he would have to tell these 2 defenders that they heard a noise. Now, he doesn't have to say how many spaces he moved, or if he started in that space or ended in that space, but he would have to tell them that they heard a noise. Or for another example, if the sniper was here and he moved 2 spaces, 1, 2, because he passed by a space that was adjacent to this defender, he would have to tell this defender that he heard a noise. Again, he doesn't need to say how many spaces he moved. He just has to tell them they heard a noise. Now, if he was here and he only moved 1 space, he doesn't need to tell the defender anything. Also, when you're moving as the sniper, you cannot move into or through a space that contains a defender. So if the sniper was here, he could not move into one of these spaces because you can't move into or through a space with the defender. And if you're moving into an enclosed space, like you can see these outlined, dark outlined spaces, those are enclosed spaces like buildings, whereas these spaces with the white lines are open spaces, like being outside. You cannot move into an enclosed space except through one of these access points that has these arrows. So if you wanted to move in this building, the only way you could currently is to come in this door because you couldn't move through a space that has a defender. Now on the defender's turn, they may move into a space that you're in. Like for instance, you could be here, you could have that marked on your board that that's your current location. The defender doesn't know where you are exactly, probably, and so he may move onto your space where you're at. Now he can do that, and you don't have to tell him that you're on this space where I'm at because you're, hidden in a corner somewhere or something like that. So again, the defenders, when they move, which we'll talk about their terms later, but when they move, they can move onto or through your space, and you don't have to tell them anything, but you cannot move into a space that they occupy. Also, you cannot move into a space you've already occupied this turn. So you couldn't, for example, move 1, 2, 3 or something like that. You couldn't go back onto a space that you've already occupied, or you couldn't go 1, 2. So again, you can't move on your turn. Now on a later turn, you could move back over a space, but on one turn you can move here, and then on the next time it's your turn you could move back here. But on a single turn using more than one move, you couldn't go 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2. And again, your movement is hidden most of the time, so you won't be placing your miniature on the board usually when you're moving. So you'll decide where you've moved, and you write that again, the number on the current number on the countdown track on the space you've moved to, and that's how you know where you are and how you can discuss later at the end of the game with the other players how you moved during the game. But again, you don't even have to tell them if you moved unless your movement takes you adjacent to one of the defenders, either starting your turn adjacent or moving adjacent or ending your turn adjacent if you move 2 or 3 spaces. If you only move one space and you move adjacent, you don't have to tell them anything. All right, as I mentioned, one of the other things you can do on your turn is use one of your loadout cards, and you can just read, they tell you what they are. So for instance, again, these are normally hidden. You got them in your hand or face down in your play area. And for instance, this one, when shooting this turn, noise tokens count as recoil tokens. Now we haven't talked about shooting yet, so you wouldn't know what that means. But if you were going to play this, you would just play it face down, and then you have to reveal it before you show it to the other players. So they tell you when you have to reveal them, but when you play one, you do have to take it out of your hand and place it face down in front of you, showing that you've played a loadout card. The opponent may not know what it is until you actually have to reveal it. Like this one, you don't reveal till the game ends. And this one lets you know, ignore any negative effects from moving 2 or 3 spaces this turn. So if you had this in your hand and before you moved, you played a card, and then you moved 2 or 3 spaces and moved adjacent to a defender during that movement, you would not have to tell them they heard a noise. Now they don't know that you played this. They just know you've played something And you don't have to reveal it till the end of the game, and then you say, oh, I played this. And this one, this mines, lets you mark a space on the board that has mines, and if a defender ends their movement in there, they're killed. And this one, you just have to reveal when they end their movement there. So they each tell you when you have to actually reveal them. But when you play them, and you can only play one per turn, you place them face down in front of you. And they're only good for one use. However, you can gain more of them, and that brings us to another possible action you can do on your turn, is to loot. So if you're in one of the numbered objective spaces that is not one of your objectives, so this person has 5 and 8, so maybe if they were at space 7, one of the possible actions they could do on their turn is loot. So if you're in an objective space that doesn't match one of your objectives, you can loot. And what that allows you to do is draw 3 loadout cards from the loadout deck and choose one to keep. You then return the other 2 to the loadout deck and reshuffle the deck. And you would mark somehow on your board, put an X or something to show that you looted that space, because the same space cannot be looted more than once a game. And also, when you loot, obviously, the players know, they don't know which objective space you're at, but they'll know you're at objective space because they'll know you're looting because you're looking through your loadout deck and getting a new loadout card. So that will give them some clue that they'll know you are at one of the objective spaces on the board. They just won't know which one. So let's talk about one of the other possible actions you can do, and that is actually completing an objective. So if you're at one of your objective spaces, in this case either 5 or 8, so you're in space 5, one of the actions you can do is complete an objective. So if you do that, you'll take your miniature, put it on the board in that space where you're completing that objective. So the defender players will then know that that's where you are. You have to take a noise token and add it to your shop bag. And then you'll reset the defender's action cubes back up to 10. Because every time during the defender's turn, they'll take actions, which we'll talk about later, which will move these cubes down to the next step on the countdown track. You only have 10 turns in order to complete an objective. If you haven't completed an objective by the end of the turn, when all the defender's action cubes are on space 1, you lose the game. But if the action cubes are like down to 4 and you manage to complete an objective, then you put your sniper marker where the objective is, or your sniper figure, you add a noise token, and then you reset the action cubes back to 10, so then you have 10 turns then to complete your second objective. And of course you reveal the objective card that you had to the other players so that they know you've completed that objective. At the beginning of your next turn, anytime your sniper figure is on the board, at the beginning of your next turn, you always remove the figure. But the defending players can use these tracking cubes in any way they wish, maybe to mark that they knew that was your last known location. And they can use these at any time. If you've alerted them that they heard a noise because you moved through, they may want to put a cube, to mark that we think, he passed through here possibly. And the final action you can do on your turn is to shoot. That's where the sniper and sniper elite comes from. So when you're shooting at a defender, you do not have to declare your target to the opponent unless you are successful, and then you remove the miniature, and then they'll know your target. But otherwise, you don't have to declare your target. You just have to say you're shooting. But you'll choose a target. So for example, if you were here and you wanted to shoot at this guy, he's in your line of sight. So we should probably talk about line of sight real quick. You have line of sight to a target as long as you can trace a line from any edge of the space you're in to any edge of the space your target is in, and it does not go through an enclosed space. So if you were here, you do have line of sight to this defender, and you say, well, there's a wall there. Well, in this game, even though there's a wall, if you have to imagine there's a window or a crack or a hole in the wall that the sniper can see through, because as long as you're not passing all the way through an enclosed space, you have line of sight. So he would have line of sight to this unit. If this unit was here, he would not have line of sight. He would not be able to shoot that unit because his shot would have to pass through an enclosed space. Another example that is right out of the rule book is if your sniper was in this space, again, you would not be able to shoot at this defender because you would have to shoot all the way through an enclosed space. If he was here, you would be able to shoot at him, but because he's here and you would have to pass through an enclosed space, you could not target him. However, you could target this unit because from an edge of your space, you can trace a line through an edge of, you can trace a line all the way to an edge of his space. Even if his figure was up here, that doesn't matter because the whole space takes up this whole space. So it doesn't matter where the figure is in the space as long as you can trace a line from the space that your sniper is in to somewhere in the space the target is in without passing through an enclosed space. Then you have line of sight and you could target this unit. The other map on the other side of the board also has some spaces that are obstructions and elevated spaces. I'm not going to flip the board over, but here's the sniper's mini map for that, and you can see these spaces that have these dashed lines are elevated spaces, and these buildings that have an X through them are obstructions. So those can also block line of sight, and so you couldn't shoot. If your sniper was here, you could hit somebody that was on this elevated space, but you couldn't shoot through it and hit somebody that's on the other side of the elevated space. And if your sniper was here and the defender was here, you cannot shoot at him because it goes through an obstruction. So again, those are on the map on the other side of the board. So we'll go back to our example here. If your sniper was here and you were targeting this unit, you have line of sight, and so you have to choose a number of tokens you're going to draw from your shot bag, and you have to draw a number of aim tokens equal to the distance to that target. So if your sniper was here, you would be 1, 2 spaces to the target, so you'd have to draw at least 2 aim tokens. So you may want to draw at least 3 or 4 tokens from the bags. The only thing you have to declare is to the other players, you don't have to say what your target is. You just have to declare the number of tokens you're going to draw from the bag. And I guess you really don't have to declare it, but you do have to show them the tokens that you drew from the bag. Now again, as I said, if you hit the target, you pick up the miniature and hand it to the defender. They can bring that unit back into play later. But that will give them some clue of where you might be since the person you attacked. So in my example, I said I'm here. I need at least 2 aim tokens to be successful. I choose that you can decide how many you want to draw. I mean, you can only choose to only draw 2 if you want, but your odds are not as good. So maybe you're going to draw 4. So you're going to draw out of the bag 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I got 2 aim tokens, so I would be successful, and I would remove that miniature and hand it to the defender. And luckily I only drew 1 noise token, so that wouldn't be anything detrimental. However, if you draw at least 2 noise tokens, whether you are successful in your shot or not, if you draw 2 noise tokens, you have to put your sniper miniature on the board in your location. So that will alert the defenders as to where you currently are, or were when you took the shot anyway. Because you can, for your first thing you do that turn is you may take the shot and then you may move after. Because again, remember, you can move, do one of the actions of shoot, complete an objective, loot, or use a loadout card, and you can do those in any order. So you may shoot and then move. So the players will at least know you were there when you took a shot, but you may not necessarily still be in that space, but they'll know you're nearby. If you draw a combination of 5 or more recoil and noise tokens, then you misfire, and no matter how many aim tokens you had, you miss your shot. So again, if you draw a combination of 5 or more recoil and noise tokens, you miss the shot no matter how many aim tokens you drew. And again, if you drew at least 2 of those were noise tokens, you have to reveal yourself on the board by placing your miniature in your location from when you took the shot. Then you reload by taking all the tokens you drew, putting them back in the bag and mixing it up. If you do successfully kill a defending unit, you get to add extra aim token to your bag, because the defenders are panicked, and so it supposedly makes it easier for you to target them. So again, every time you successfully kill a unit, you get to add an aim token to your bag. Well, that's if you kill a soldier. If you end up shooting and killing one of the officers, instead of adding an aim token to your bag, you take the suppression token off the officer you killed. So if you shot and killed this officer with the black base, you would take the suppression token off of the specialist card for that officer and add that to your bag instead of an aim token. Now, if you kill that officer again, if he comes back, because these units can come back on the board on the defender's turn, if he gets placed back on the board in the future, there's no longer a suppression token there. So if you kill him again in the future, then you do add an aim token instead to your bag. And these suppression tokens, they basically negate 1 noise token. So if you drew 2 noise tokens and a suppression token, you wouldn't have to reveal yourself, because the suppression token negates 1 of the noise tokens. So it would actually take drawing 3 noise tokens and 1. If you drew 1 suppression token, it would at least take 3 noise tokens to be drawn to force you to reveal your position. As I mentioned earlier, after you complete an objective, you do have to add a noise token to your shot bag. And one of the defender's actions, which we haven't talked about yet, is a spot action. And if you're located with a spot action, then you have to add a noise token to your bag. So that's pretty much the sniper's turn. He can shoot, move, loot, complete an objective, or use one of one of his loadout cards. Now, again, you can always move and use a loadout card if you still have one to use, but you can only do one of the shoot, loot, or complete an objective. So on your turn, you can only do one of those three things. But, and again, as I mentioned, you can do your things in any order, so you can move and then loot, or loot and then move. And at any time on your turn, you can, use one of your loadout cards according to how it says it should be used. So that's it for the sniper. Before we get to how the defender plays, there were just a few more things on the map I wanted to talk about. We talked about the enclosed spaces have the dark lines around them, that they're like these rail cars or these buildings and rooms. And you can always tell the enclosed spaces because they have the black lines separating the spaces, whereas the open spaces have the white lines. But I did want to talk about these spaces that have the hash and the exclamation mark. Those are difficult terrain, so they cost one extra movement to move into those. So for instance, if your sniper was here, he could not just use one movement to move in there. He would have to use at least two movement to move into that space. It can be moved through, but again, it costs an extra movement to move into that space. These water spaces that have the X through them, they do not block line of sight, but you cannot, defenders nor the sniper can move into those or through those spaces. And then, of course, I think I already mentioned the colored borders are just the sector colors. We got the black here. So whenever there's these borders meet, that still just costs one movement to cross there. It's just, those are just denoting, the red border and the black border meet there, but that's not a wall or anything like that. So the defenders either want to wound the sniper twice by doing an attack on him when he is in their space, or they've moved into the space with him. Remember, he can't move into a space that they're in. Or they want to slow him down to where he can't complete his objectives, so the countdown track reaches 1, and then his turn ends when it's on 1, and he runs out of time to complete the objective. So during the defender's turn, each squad can either gather intel or take 2 actions. So when they gather intel, the officer of that squad must be in their sector. So for instance, the red officer, if his squad is doing the gather intel, he would have to be within the borders of his red sector. As long as he's within the borders of the red sector, that squad can do a gather intel action, and if they do that, they move both their cubes down the countdown track, and then the sniper has to say if he is in that sector. He doesn't have to say where he is in the sector, he just has to say whether or not he is in that sector. So that's something all squads could do. Then the black squad could do the same thing because the officer is within the black sector, so he could gather intel, and then the sniper would have to say if he's within that black sector. There are some neutral sectors that are not in the border of one of these colored sectors, and that's this section right here is a neutral sector, and I believe this little section right here is outside because the black border sector is right there and the yellow is here, so that's a little neutral sector there. So as I mentioned, if they do a gather intel, that costs both of their actions, and then that squad can't take any other actions that turn. Again, if they don't gather intel, then they can take two possible actions. One of the actions they can do is move a unit of their squad up to two spaces. So, for instance, this soldier could move 1, 2, and then they would have to, that would be one of their actions, so they would move it down the countdown track, and then perhaps this soldier here wants to move 1, 2, and then that would be their second action, and then that's all the actions that the red squad could take, and then the black squad and the yellow squad would still have their actions to take. When moving, the units in a squad can move through other units. So for instance, if this guy was going to move 2, he could move 1, 2. He could move through this soldier, but he can't end his movement in the same space as another unit. So each unit always has to end their movement in their own space, but they can move through other units, unlike the sniper, who cannot enter a space with a defending unit, just not even to move through. Another action a unit can take is to attack the current space they're in. So if this unit thinks he's in the same space as a sniper, he can say he's attacking, and the sniper has to declare if he's there or not. If he is there, then he has to take a wound by flipping the wound token over. If he ever takes a second wound before he's completed both of his objectives, then he's dead and the sniper loses the game. And if they attack and they are there and they have to take a wound, they go ahead and place their miniature there to show that that's where they are. But as I've mentioned at the beginning of the sniper's turn, he always can pick up his miniature from the board. Another action that a unit can take is to spot. If they do that, they choose an adjacent space. Now this soldier, if he was taking the spot action, he could choose this space, this space, this space, this space, any adjacent space, even if it goes outside of an enclosed space or into an enclosed space. He can spot any adjacent space. He picks the space, says that's where he's spotting. If the sniper is there, he has to place his miniature, like if he said he's spotting here. If he's there, he has to place his miniature, and then he has to take a noise token and put it into his shot bag. Another action that a unit can take is to sweep. So if they sweep, they choose two matching adjacent spaces, and if the sniper is in one of those spaces or in the same space as the unit taking the action, he has to say he is there, but he doesn't have to say which of those spaces he is in. So matching adjacent means they have to be the same type of space. So either both of them have to be enclosed spaces, or both of them have to be open spaces, or if you're playing on the other side of the map, elevated spaces. Those are the three types of spaces: open, elevated, or enclosed. So if this soldier was taking the sweep action, he could choose these two spaces, but he could not choose this space and this space because they're not matching adjacent. So if he chose these two spaces, then if the sniper was here, here, or in the space that the soldier is in, he would have to say, yes, I'm in one of those spaces. But again, he doesn't have to say which one. Another action that a squad can take is to deploy an officer. If, for instance, this yellow officer had been killed by the sniper earlier in the game, maybe on the previous turn, he could take a deploy a officer action and place it on the place the officer on his starting space. Another action that a squad can take is to deploy a soldier. If, for instance, this this soldier had been killed on a previous turn, the black squad could take one action to deploy a soldier. if the officer for that squad is in his sector. So this officer is in the black sector, so he would be able to deploy a soldier, and he can deploy that soldier into a matching adjacent space. So he could put it in any of these spaces. He could even deploy the soldier into a different sector like this, as long as the officer is in his sector. If the officer was here and he was taking the deploy soldier action, because he's in a enclosed space, he would have to deploy the soldier into one of the enclosed spaces that's adjacent to him, because it has to be a matching adjacent space. And for example, if this officer was outside his sector, he would not be able to take a deploy soldier action, because he's not inside his sector. He must be inside his sector to take the deploy soldier action. And the final action a squad could possibly take is to dismiss a unit from the board. And to do that, you just take the unit off the board, and it cannot be deployed again this turn for that squad. And a reason you may want to do that is if you've got a unit that's very far from where you've determined the sniper is, and so the best way to get him closer is going to be to dismiss him, and then on a future turn deploy him closer, something like that. Also, before or after doing one of a squad's actions, that squad's officer may use their special ability on their specialist card. So for instance, this one, the officer could use this ability to move a soldier from this officer's squad to any empty space. The chosen soldier must already be on the board. They cannot take an action this turn, either before or after being moved. And then once an officer uses an ability, they have to remove the action cube from it. So they'll only be able to use that ability one more time, and they can't use that ability again on that same turn. But on a future turn, they could use this ability one more time, and then that's all they'll be able to use it for the game. But that does not count as an action. That's just something they can do once per turn. And they can do that before or after doing another action with their squad, or before or after gathering intel if they chose to do that instead of taking two actions. Also, a squad can take, like the red squad may take an action. They don't have to take both of their actions before another squad acts. So red squad could take one of their actions, then maybe the black squad takes one of their actions. Then maybe the red squad takes one of their second action, then maybe the yellow squad takes an action, then the black, then the yellow. So the squads don't have to complete both of their actions before another squad does an action. They can do them in any order. And one more thing, it is possible to take the same action twice. So for instance, the red squad could use the move action with one unit and the move action with another unit, or the same unit can take two actions. So for example, the red squad may use this to move a unit, and then he, with that same unit, has him do a sweep action, this space and this space and this space. So a unit can take two actions, or two different units can take the same action, but one unit cannot take the same action twice. So to say that again, two different units can take the same action, or one unit can take two different actions, but one unit cannot take the same actions twice in the same turn. So that's kind of an important rule, because if a soldier was on a space and did an attack action and wounded the sniper, the sniper was there, he was able to wound him, he wouldn't be able to attack a second time and just finish him off and end the game right there. So anyway, that's just an important rule to remember. And that is it really for the defender's turn. So again, the sniper wins the game if he's able to complete both of his objectives. The defenders win the game if they manage to wound the sniper twice, or if their action cubes are on the final step of the countdown track at the beginning of the defender's turn. So that when the countdown, when the action markers get moved down to the one space on the countdown track, the sniper will get to take his turn. If he's not able to complete his second objective by the end of that turn, then the defenders win the game. And there is a player aid for the defenders as well. I don't think I showed that during setup like I did show the player aid for the sniper. So I think it's already pretty much all set back up how it should be for the beginning of the game. So why don't we go through a few example turns and then we'll wrap it up. Alright, so it's the beginning of the game. The sniper has objectives 5 and 8. So 8 is here, 5 is here. First thing he has to do is choose what location he's coming in on, and remember it can't be one of the sector's entrance points where he has an objective. So we wrote that he's going to come in up here at 5. So his first turn, he has to move. That has to be the first, his first turn of the game, he has to move. So we're going to have him move 2. So he's going to move here for 1, here for 2. He doesn't move adjacent or start or end adjacent to anybody, so he didn't make any noise. So we'll write, because the countdown track is at 10 and he's moved, so he's going to put the number 10 on his small board that the defenders can't see, and that's where he shows that he moved to. Now he could still take an action like shoot if he wanted to shoot at this guy, but we're not going to have him do that. So really all he has to say to the defending players is, okay, I've taken my turn. So they don't know, what he did really. So now it's the defender's turn. So for the first turn of the game, the defenders probably want to gather intel. So the red player says he's going to gather intel, and the sniper says, no, I'm not in your sector, because he's not. Remember, he's up here in this neutral sector. So the yellow player or squad, they say they're going to gather intel also. So the sniper has to say if he's in the yellow sector. He says, no, I'm not. And finally, the black squad decides to do the same thing, gather intel. And so the sniper has to say if he's in their sector, and he says, no, I'm not. So now the defending player probably has a pretty good idea that because he's not in any of these colored sectors, he had to have come in on a neutral sector. So they probably have a pretty good idea that he's in this neutral sector. He couldn't be over here because it doesn't have an entrance point. Well, now he could have come in on one of these other entrance points and moved into a neutral sector, maybe here, over here. So I guess they could think he's there, but they know for sure he's either in this neutral sector or this neutral sector. But now that's the end of all of their turns, so now it's the sniper's turn again. Now this time he doesn't have to move first. He could do something else and then move. Or not move at all if he doesn't want to. But we know he needs to get to this objective number 5. But now he also knows they kind of know he's probably over in this area, although he could possibly over there. So what he's going to do is try to see if he can get in here to this objective. So he's just going to move one time, since he's only moving once, moving one space, even though he's moving, ending adjacent to another unit. He doesn't have to tell them they heard anything. If he moved twice and moved here, then he would have to tell both of these guys they heard something. But he's just going to move here. So because he's on countdown space 9, he's going to write a 9 in this space. Now again, he doesn't have to tell the players he did anything. He could shoot. He could decide to shoot this guy or this guy or this guy, because once you're in an enclosed space, all other enclosed spaces in that room are in line of sight. But, that's likely to give away his position if he does hit somebody. So he's not going to do anything else. He's just going to do that move, and now he's just going to tell the players, I'm done. He's not going to say what he did. He just says, I'm done. Alright, it's the defender's turn. So they, have a pretty good idea that he either is here or somewhere near over here. So we'll have the yellow squad. They're going to go and they're going to check out this area. So they're going to have this guy move 1, 2, and maybe they'll move their other guy, and he's going to move 1, 2. Alright, that's both actions for the yellow. Alright, the black squad, I think they're going to move a unit 1, 2, and maybe they'll move another unit 1, 2. And now the red squad, maybe they're going to move a soldier, this soldier 1, 2, and then that same soldier is going to do a sweep. So he has to do his space and 2 matching adjacent spaces. So he can't sweep this space where the sniper actually is. So he says he's going to indicate this space and this space and this space that he's in. And the sniper says, no, I'm not in any of those spaces. So he got kind of lucky. If this soldier had decided to sweep in here, he could have done this space, and then he would have had to say, yes, I'm in one of those spaces. But in this instance, he didn't. So that's it. All the defenders have taken their turn. Now it's the sniper's turn. So the sniper's here. He could move 2 and end up where one of his objectives are and then complete the objective. And I think he's going to do that. Now, he would have to tell, because he's going to move more than one, he would have to tell this guy he made noise. But they're going to know once he completes that objective that that's where he is anyway. But that's kind of going to put him in a pickle here, because there's a lot of people around it. But let's have him do that. So he's going to move 1, 2. So because we're on countdown track 8, he's going to write a 8 in the space that he moved to. And because moving more than one that's a noisy move. He has to tell any unit that was adjacent to where he started or passed through or ended that they heard a noise. So he tells this soldier he heard a noise. So maybe they'll mark that space and say, that guy heard a noise, so we know, or they may want to mark the spaces around there. But it doesn't matter because now the sniper's going to take an action. He's going to do complete an objective, so he reveals his objective card for space 5. Puts his sniper miniature on the board, so now everyone knows that's where he is. And he has to add 1 noise token to his shot bag. And now because he completed an objective, we reset the action tokens for the defenders back to 10. Alright, well, now it's the defender's turn, so the sniper is kind of in a pickle. So we'll say the red player, he's going to use 1 cube to move this guy 1 space here, and then he's going to use one of his other actions to... He's going to use that other action to sweep with this officer, because they don't know if he completed the objective first and then moved after. They're not sure, so they're not positive he's still there, but they think so. But anyway, he's going to sweep here and choose these 2 adjacent spaces, and the sniper says, no, I'm not in any of those spaces. All right. So the other squads need to start moving closer that way. So yellow is going to move 2. So he's going to move, gosh, what's his best way to get there? 1, 2. And he's going to move his officer 1, 2 maybe. And then black, he's going to move a guy 1. Oh, that's all he'd be able to move because it cost an extra movement to move in there. So maybe he wouldn't go there. Maybe he'd go here 1, 2. And then this black, he's going to move 1, 2. So they're going to start closing in that way. Alright, we'll show one more round. So the sniper's kind of in a pickle because he can't move through any enemy units, so he can't get out. So he's going to have to shoot somebody so he can get out. So he sees this guy's coming this way, so he thinks that's probably not the best way to go. He's going to go back the way he came. So he's going to move first. He's going to go ahead and just move 1. So he's going to move right here. So we're now on countdown 9, and he's moved to this spot, and now we're on this. So you can do it however you want, but I put like a -2 so I know it's the second countdown track, because the first one he was on 9 there, and I don't want it to be confusing, so I put a -2 so I know it's on the second the reset of the countdown track. But anyway, he's in there. And then for his action, he's going to shoot. So he's got to pull at least 1 because this guy he's definitely in line of sight because he's in the same enclosed area. He's 1 space away, so he just has to pull 1 aim token. So I don't have to declare who I'm shooting. I just have to say I'm shooting, and I'm going to draw 3 tokens. So reach into my bag, mix them up, and draw out 3. Oh no, you gotta be kidding me. No aim token. Well, at least I didn't draw 2 noise tokens, so I don't have to reveal my current position. They probably know I'm still in that building, but they don't know exactly where. But anyway, I gotta reload the bag. I don't have to tell him who my target was or if I moved or anything like that. So other than that, maybe I could also use this. So I'm going to use a loadout card. They don't have to know what it is, but for this one, I secretly mark my current space on the board with an X. So I will do that, and that'll show that I put a mine there. If an enemy ends their movement on that space, they are immediately killed. Reveal this card, remove the unit from the board. So all I have to do is say I'm playing a loadout card. They don't know what it is. Alright, and that's going to end the sniper's turn. Alright, so now we're back to the defender's turn. We'll have this unit, he's going to do a sweep. So he says he's going to do these two adjacent spaces and, of course, the space he's on. So well, we haven't showed a spot. So we'll just say he gets lucky and he says he's going to do a spot and he chooses this space here. And actually, I should have picked up this miniature and not moved it. The players wouldn't know. I wouldn't have left my miniature there and moved it to show that I moved there. I would have picked that up at the beginning of my turn. But now this unit spots in this space and he says, you know, I'm spotting here. And yes, that's where I am. So I have to then place my miniature and add a noise token to my bag. And then so the other action for the red, maybe the officer moves 2 spaces to where he knows I'm at. Unfortunately, he's out of action, so he can't do an attack. But they want to pin me in, so maybe the yellow, he's going to use his action to move 1, 2 and block off that doorway. And then the other one, he's going to move 1, 2, and maybe black is going to move 1, 2 and help block in that doorway. And this guy is going to move 1, 2. And so, you know, I've not really made too good of decisions here as the sniper because he's pinned in and they're swarming there and they're going to be getting hits on him here pretty soon because he doesn't really have a way out. He can't move through. So he's going to have to shoot, and hopefully if he had successfully shot that guy, which he should have, I can't believe I didn't draw an aim, he would have had out that door. But anyway, I think you can see how the game plays. We never got to use a specialist ability or anything, but anyway, I've only played it by myself. I played it once with the solo mode, which I didn't show the rules for that here. The rules are different for solo mode. There's some AI cards and so forth. But that was fun, and then I also played it solo like this as 2 players, and obviously that doesn't work at all because it's a hidden movement game, and if you know, I mean, even though I tried to say, okay, if I didn't really know where he was, this is what I would do, you know, you do know, so it's not true. So it's if you're going to play this game solo, you need to use the solo rules, and I hope to be able to play this, you know, sometime in the near future, maybe next month against a real opponent. But it does appear that it'll be a fun game. So that's it. This video's gone on pretty long. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.